Hey gang, my guest today is Kirby Ferguson, a filmmaker who is best known for his online series Everything is a Remix. I had a really great conversation with him, and if you agree, one way to help the show is to leave a 5-star review. Thanks. Hi, welcome to Culturally Determined. I'm your host, Aryeh Cohen-Wade, and my guest today is Kirby Ferguson. Kirby, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Kirby, and I am a filmmaker, writer, and speaker.
Thank you for coming back on.
My pleasure.
So I have been wanting to have you back on for a while, and the occasion originally was that you are redoing your seminal video series, Everything is a Remix. So you are remixing it, and I thought
Yes.
that was interesting and wanted to talk to you about it. But a couple weeks ago, you announced that you are essentially retiring from doing the stuff you've been doing for a decade or so, which is making videos for online consumption and talking about some of your various ideas.
Yeah.
And so that made it even more urgent to talk to you before you enter your period of seclusion.
Yes.
Well, let's at least talk briefly about that sort of more breaking news of why you decided to sort of hang up, hang up your video editing software and what led you to make that decision.
Yeah. I mean, it's not quite as stark as what you're saying. I will keep making video. I actually will be doing a lot of video production in the future, but it just won't be, I won't be making free content and trying to make a go of it as a content creator,
Mhm.
which I did for a long time. I did it for the way I explained it was it worked for maybe 4 years, really worked. Then, I scraped by for a few years, and then there's been a few years lately where it's just not working, and I'm basically doing charity work. I'm just subsidizing it with other labor from elsewhere.
Mhm.
So it's not been working for a long time. I've tried a lot of different things, and I had a baby is the most important thing. So I've got a son now, and like everybody else, that just totally reorients what is important and your priorities. And it just had to change. It wasn't even a choice, really. It just had to change. So basically, the big thing that's different is just that providing and making an income is the top line priority for me. But that's what I have to continually hit. Whereas before, I was sort of like I was doing things that I thought were interesting and rewarding, and that hopefully could provide some sort of insight. And I wasn't too concerned about. I was hoping that they could be commercial, but it wasn't really the core aim. So basically, like I've done some video production for the New York Times in the past. I'm probably doing more stuff for them in the future. Some stuff that I've written, and also some editing for other writers at the paper. So there's still stuff that I will be doing that's fairly visible. I just won't be doing. I don't plan to be making new videos that are in my traditional sort of video essay format
Mhm.
and putting them out for free on my YouTube station. So as far as I know, once I finish this reboot of Everything is Remix, which has 2 parts left, I don't think there'll be anything new on my YouTube channel for the foreseeable future, unless it's some sort of like fun thing that I start doing just as a hobby for the hell of it. But it won't be the style that I'm known for.
Mhm. Okay, so obviously there's been a major shift to your personal circumstances, and congratulations on having
Thanks so
a
much.
child.
Thank you.
Has also sort of the entire ecosystem changed since you started, such that
Yeah.
it's harder now to
Yeah.
actually make money from doing this sort of free online content,
Yeah.
where 10 years ago it wasn't?
I think it's difficult to say because I'm a sample size of one. And basically, I went viral one time, like 10 years ago, and then I've not really done it since then. But it was definitely then there was just, I've said this a bunch of times, but back then it just seemed like if you just did something good, you could get a good amount of attention. And I think that this Everything is Remix series went beyond that. It truly went viral and got seen by a lot of people. But in that era, if you just did something good, that was enough.
Mhm.
Like you could get seen 100,000 times or 50,000 times or whatever. There's some sort of like wow sort of number to a person who's a hobbyist. Whereas now there's just so many people doing it, and I just see content all the time that is superb quality. Just seems like fantastic stuff. And they'll have 2,000, 3,000 views or whatever, sometimes less, sometimes 500 views, sometimes 800 views, like it really is just hyper saturated now. And it's very like how to break through is very mysterious.
Hmm.
And I just feel like there's sort of a deflation that is in effect, an attention deflation that is in effect, where there's a lot more views going around, but they're worth a lot less, generally speaking. And there's big winners who get just tens of millions of views, but there's just more and more people who are just sort of trickling along at the lower end of the spectrum. And that became me. Like I the reboot of Everything is Remix, it's done fine, and it ultimately will get to six figures or whatever, which is amazing. I'm not poo-pooing that. I mean, that's an incredible thing to do, but it's kind of slow going to get there, and it's not enough. Those sorts of numbers aren't a living, that sort of
Hmm.
slowly accumulating six-figure views isn't really something that you can make a living out of. So yeah, to me it just seems like it's just a world that I don't know that needs me, or needs anybody, really. It just seems like there's a ton of voices, and it sort of seems like a lot of us should just maybe find something else to do. That's my somewhat embittered take.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. And just you say like just doing something good,
Yeah.
isn't enough. I mean, like doing something
No.
good is hard.
God no.
There's not
Yes.
when you actually, I mean, anyone has the raw materials with a basic set of skills to do something, and the things you have been doing are very highly, from a layperson's perspective, they seem extremely highly edited. You clearly put a ton of work into them, and then I guess when you compare it to a TikTok video that gets
Uh-huh.
10 million views or something,
Yeah.
um, and maybe it's just like a 17-year-old like dancing or pulling a prank or something, then I guess
Yeah.
that's sort of dispiriting. It's like the 500-page novel versus the tweet or something.
Yeah.
So there is that, and yeah, and your work, everything that I've seen has been consistently good. And the last time we spoke, it was about your documentary series. This is not a conspiracy theory, and that took like 7 or 8 years, or maybe
Hmm.
even more, to fully complete.
Yeah.
So just doing something good is very difficult.
It's
There's
not cut.
there,
Yeah.
there's a
That's
lot of
hard
crap
on
out there.
Yeah, that's hard on its own. And then to have something that is good that also is popular is basically, you're a lottery winner at that point, or you're super clever. But I think most of the time you're a lottery winner.
Right. And it seems like the model is emerging such that, and it's different for different mediums, and video is different than writing,
Yeah.
but like sort of the Substack model has emerged as an alternative to the advertising model. And I think that's generally positive, but has drawbacks, like it sort of becomes a group think kind of thing. And you're often someone who has, like, at least in the Substack world, someone who has like various grievances, and slams some identifiable group that other people don't like. That seems to be a good way to attract a couple thousand people who are willing to pay you $5 a month. But
Yep.
the advertising based model, which is what most of online media embraced circa 20 years ago, has been basically a total disaster from almost every perspective: economic, moral, cultural, spiritual, perhaps even. Like, it's really bad stuff. So something seems like it has to change. And so yeah, so that's one model. Then the other one would just be having some sort of institutional affiliation or wealthy patron or something like that. The writer who gets hired by a magazine, or Peter Thiel decides to subsidize you.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a viable model also. But of course, you have to keep either the institution happy or the, fickle billionaire happy, in
Yeah.
that situation. So it seems, yeah, I mean, it's super rough out there
Yeah.
in general.
Yes. Yeah. It's really tough. And I mean, I think Kevin Kelly had this, super influential essay back in the day called 1000 True Fans, I think was the title of it. And the premise, of course, was that you could have a number like 1,000 of just real fans, like people who want to see everything that you do. And the idea was that you could make a living off of that. And I'm pretty confident that I have those 1,000 true fans. And that actually doesn't work. Like, you do need, that's not the right number. I mean, Andy, I'm sure he picked that number just because it was a simple, catchy number. But I don't know what the number is, but the net number is high. It's got to be six figures, I think, or whatever that you're drawing in there regularly. And that is tough to get. And most people can't have that unless you're like super specialized, unless you've got like a really great niche. Like if you're the guy in a small pond,
Right.
I think that can work as well. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably a better route, is just to serve some community that you really know, and that you can just serve better than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, finding some sort of niche audience, especially things related to ways that would make the audience money in some way. Like there's this guy who was kind of he had no institutional affiliation, like a guy in his 20s who started this newsletter about the Fed.
Yeah.
And I think his name is Nathan Tankus. If I might have that wrong, but he knows his stuff, I guess, and attracted an audience, but also he's it's people who want to make money based on what the next economic move by the Federal Reserve is going to be, and so those type of people are more likely to spend $5 a month or something than just someone who wants to have it, be exposed to interesting thoughts about remix
Yes.
culture and
Yes.
and other stuff.
Yes. Serving some sort of niche that has commercial value is definitely probably a more sustainable move than just trying to make interesting things that don't kind of have a clear commercial value to them.
Right. It's a puzzle that only a few people have sort of figured out, and a lot of those people had some pre-existing fame or something, like Glenn Greenwald or Matthew Iglesias or something, already were major media figures, and then they went off and are doing their own thing, but they're
Yeah.
monetizing an audience that was huge
Yeah.
already because of various institutional affiliations in addition to their own talent and such.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else you want to say about this aspect before we actually talk about some of your work?
No, I think that's plenty.
Okay, so why did you decide to redo or reboot or remix the Everything is a Remix series?
Because it's just a series that people keep watching, keep talking about, keep sharing, and it was just getting old. So I updated it. I gave it like a really minor update in 2015. It originally came out between 2010 and 2012. So I guess it was established in 2015 that I update this thing occasionally. So I thought, in another 5 years or so, I started thinking about updating it again. But then when I started to actually try to do that, I just thought, well, I can just do this all over again. I think I should just do it again. I think I could do it better
Hmm.
if I just sort of retold the story in a new way, and it would be more exciting for me rather than doing sort of a minor, like a point one style kind of update to it. It's a reboot of the original story, told in a new way with lots of new material and lots of new examples. It was something that I started a while ago, that I updated these to keep them current, because it just never goes away. Like, that's another funny thing with my career, is that I've kept making new stuff since then. I've done a bunch of different things, but none of them can consistently outcompete the original Everything is a Remix. Like, in my stats, they'll like briefly go above it and then they'll drop back down, and then it's back to Everything is a Remix ruling the roost again in my stat. So it's just like culture has spoken, and it's a thing that people want. And I wanted to keep it alive for people because they value it so much, and make it the best that I can make it for the new generation of people.
Hmm. Has your core idea changed, or have you updated your beliefs
Mhm.
since then, or are you more looking at bringing in more current examples and making it look nicer in
Yeah.
2022 than it did 10 years ago?
It's mostly the latter, for sure. It's mostly making it look better, making it play better, and using new examples and incorporating new technologies. That is the bulk of it. But the fourth part is going to be especially different. The fourth part of the original series was about copyright, and I feel like that story is not relevant right now. I feel like that's not a topic that people are interested in, or even is kind of culturally resonant. So it's going to go to a completely different. It'll have a completely different destination, but the path before that will be quite similar, told in a new way, new examples, but the same skeleton for sure. But it definitely, the final chapter of it is definitely quite different.
Okay, that's interesting. And, I assume people have heard of it at this point, but people should check out. Well, at this point, would you, if someone has not ever seen it, would you encourage them to check out what version of the project would you
I
encourage
would
them?
still send them. I
Yeah.
would say that you would watch the Everything is Remixed Remastered, which is the 2015 version, which is the full. Then you get the full story. And probably as soon as I'm working on the third part of the new version. There's four parts to the series. I'm working on the third part now. When I have that third part done in the next few months, then I would point people. I feel like at that point you've got enough of the story that you can watch the new one. But for
Mhm.
anybody who hasn't seen it before, I would say that the original version still has most of the you can get the complete idea from the original series, whereas this new one will keep you waiting for a few more months before you get.
Okay. So well, I'll include the link to that in the podcast notes. And if people Google Everything's Remix, they'll both find the
Yep.
website. And the first video that pops up is the 2015 Everything's Remix Remastered, which you were just referencing. So people can check that out. And yeah, really, I think it is a seminal work that, it has. I mean, how many videos from,
Yeah.
YouTube, 2011 YouTube, do people
Care
still check
about.
out
Yeah.
or anything? So
Absolutely.
it has staying power, and it's
Yeah.
the ideas have shaped my thinking about culture over
Yeah.
the past 10 years. So yeah, I mean it's a great
It's
work, and
a unique. Yeah. It's a pretty. As far as I know, it's a pretty unique little piece of media from that era. Because yeah, there isn't. I can't think of anything else from there. Not a video or a video series. So to make like a documentary in that era online was definitely unusual. And the other ones I can think of are conspiracy documentaries, actually, maybe because that's another culture that I have an interest in. But things like Zeitgeist and Loose
yeah,
Change,
loose change,
which are
yeah.
garbage and have not do not stand up. Those were the other sorts of things that were that people were really into in that era.
Yeah, yeah. Things that did not have like a negative influence on humanity. It might
Yes.
stand alone.
Yes.
Um,
Like
okay,
possibly.
okay. Well, speaking of conspiracy theories, I think the last time we spoke was 2 years ago. I think it was during the pandemic, and Trump was still in office, and we talked about a conspiracy theorist is president, and what does that mean? And the conspiracy theories have only multiplied since then.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, of course, there's January 6th, there's Stop the Steal, and all the weird COVID
Yeah.
and vaccine related
Yeah.
conspiracy
QAnon.
theories, and it seems like, I don't know, conspiracy theories are on the march. And I think more people seem to see conspiratorial a conspiratorial hand behind various events, even people who otherwise are totally rational people. It just seems like we're
Yeah.
moving more and more into conspiracy world. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we live in conspiracy land now. I mean, something I talk about in the doc, this is not a conspiracy theory, is that during times when people are afraid, this is demonstrated throughout American history, when people are afraid, conspiracy theories bubble up to the surface, right? And can potentially become mainstream. Like another era when conspiracy theories were really popular and fully mainstream was during the Red Scare, when we thought communists were everywhere, and they kind of were everywhere. It wasn't a delusional concern for sure. But that was another era where conspiracy theories were being spoken about by politicians, and it was, it completely gone mainstream. People were super scared of the atom bomb and communists. So very scary era, in many ways scarier than now is possibly. So yeah, it's just it's a product, a symptom of this hyper partisan era where the two sides are really afraid of each other and just thinking the worst of each other. So I don't know when it's going to pass, but I do kind of think it will pass. That's my optimistic bottom line. But I think it could be here for a while to come still.
Yeah, I mean, have you? I mean, have you been surprised is sort of a stupid question, but
Yeah.
it always sort of seems like, well, things can't get crazier than this in America, and then they do. Um,
Yeah.
and the idea that the fever is going to break sometime, that hasn't happened yet. Do you think it has to happen? Like, does do things have to get more normal, or people are just like going to lose interest in this craziness, or
I have no idea. I don't know how it will pan out. I just know that it likely it just has to decline at some point. That's just the way that culture works, right? Like trend lines don't keep going in one direction. But if we're not bottomed out, would not surprise me. There's way farther that we can go, of course. And 2024, the 2024 election is not looking promising. It's looking potentially worse than 2020 was. So it is totally possible that we have not bottomed out yet. That is for certain. But I don't know if it takes sort of that cathartic moment to move on, or what it takes, or if it just sort of gradually runs out of gas, or what. I
Mhm,
really wouldn't want to speculate about how it will happen, but I do think it will happen.
mhm. We didn't discuss this in our little pregame, but this just came to mind. Did you see the article in New York Magazine about the vibe shift from a couple months ago?
Oh, no, I didn't.
It was an interesting piece. It was semi-satirical, and the conceit was sort of like the author, a woman who was maybe about 37, thinking, okay, we're sort of emerging from the pandemic, but I feel like I'm out of touch with the youth. Like I've grown a little bit older. The
Mhm.
clothes I was wearing seem uncool now, and there's
Yeah.
various trends that I don't quite understand. So it was sort of tongue-in-cheek thing about just like everyone ages, and eventually like the things that you think are cool, like young people don't think that's cool anymore. That's sort of a natural part of culture.
Yep.
But people
Yes.
start talking about it like, okay, is there some sort of cultural change that is about to happen, or we're in the middle of, or that happened during the pandemic? And she interviewed this guy who was like a professional trend caster or something, which is sort of like,
Mhm.
a bullshit artist who gets paid by companies to try to offer what
Yep.
he thinks is going to happen. But people really embrace this article, at least on Twitter, where I see most people talking about articles. And some people were like, oh, finally, a vibe shift. Like, we need something new. It feels like the culture is so worn out, and, you know,
Yeah.
we're just like stuck in a rut or something. Like, maybe the young people will somehow come up with something new. But the way I've also seen people are just sort of like, whatever they don't like about circa 2020 culture, and there's plenty of things not to like, they're like, okay, the vibe ship is that now we're not doing that anymore. So, now we're not so concerned with pronouns, or something. Like, that's just an
Right.
example I pulled out. Or
Yeah.
yeah, now we're kids are going to be having sex without like worrying about, all the repercussions, or, or something like that. Maybe it'll, after people were pent up during the pandemic, it'll be like a roaring 20s kind of thing. That's one possible idea.
Right.
Does
Yeah.
that, I mean, do you, as someone who has read about how culture always is taking stuff from the past and changing it to invent something new, does that
Yeah.
vibe with you?
I
Does the vibe
absolutely. I
ship
mean,
vibe with you?
that's just culture, right? Like, and I think things can change really. An optimistic note I can sound is that things can change really quickly, and you don't like as soon as you kind of see that it's happening. In my opinion, it's already happened. So things they can seem and they, of course, have taken a while to happen, but you weren't noticing it. But things definitely can turn pretty quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like I'm just purely speculating, but just the rancor of modern society, just this hyper partisan fighting all the time and everything being super political too.
Hmm.
Just not being able to escape politics no matter where you go. That stuff's just got to get old. It's just these things you can't stay in the red just year after year after year, right? Like these things have to the source fuel has to get exhausted at some point, right? So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is an optimistic, happy phase coming, sort of like after the Carter era, right? We had the sun, the depiction of the '80s that we all see now, which I know is an exaggeration, but the go-go '80s, the me '80s where people just wanted to have fun and watch stupid sitcoms and do
Hmm.
drugs and whatever, like I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of era is coming. And I think we'd all kind of welcome that, right? That would be a relief, even if it was stupid and misguided or whatever. Like, good Lord, can we just lighten up for a little bit?
Right. And there's various people who are predicting, I mean, there's a group of people who are thinking that like young people are going to be moving in sort of a traditional conservative direction. Like
Hmm.
maybe they want to go, there's this idea of like trad life of going to like an ideal vision of you live on a farm and you're not looking at your phone all the time and you're connected to the land and nature and animals and stuff. And it's unclear
That sounds
how
right.
well, it's unclear how real it is or if this is just like cosplay, like so many other things in American life. But young people who grew up fully in the online era, you can see very obviously how they could be sick of, posting selfies of themselves and just want to sort of disconnect from that world. And there's plenty of people who are sick of the online life that has, been
Yeah.
built around us. And if they can rebel against it in some way that doesn't involve like, eco-fascism or something, I guess
Yeah.
that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I could interject, like something that's happening too, like the reason that I am bowing out of content creation is that it's personal, primarily. Like if it weren't for the personal component, I don't know, I'd probably just keep trucking, probably at least for a while. But a lot of people are just getting burnt out, like we've been living in this creator economy for a while now, and people are just getting tuckered out. It's very stressful when you can see things are declining. It's very hard to pull out of that decline. It's very hard to make the trend line go up again when things start going downhill. And that's just the natural course of most things, right? They run, bands break up, and
Mhm.
so, the movie franchises peter out. Things run their course and move on, and that's very tough. It's very tough to when that's your life. That's real tough. So it's a very stressful and very criticism. It's a criticism magnet kind of life, where you can really be taking really personal insults a lot. So I mean, there's a lot of people that are just getting tired of this content creator lifestyle as well, right?
Right. And I mean, things have to end at some point, but like the Star Wars cinematic universe is
Yeah.
going strong. And a lot of
Yes.
things like that, Marvel and
I
other
don't know about
things.
that. I don't know if it's going strong, but it's making money. That's for sure.
Yeah, or at least I mean, every like prominent actor of the past 20 or 30 years more or less has been in like a Marvel or DC superhero movie at this point.
Yeah.
And all those characters were like created between 1939 and 1965. And Star Wars is going back to the well over and over again. It does, I mean, this is sort of like the decadent culture thesis. And from everything's remix perspective, like there's nothing new. We're just going back over and over again. But it is somewhat different now that like IP rules popular culture, and it is just another Marvel movie, another Star Wars, Batman
Yeah.
rebooted for the fifth time, and
Yeah.
and people are sort of sick of this, and even people seem to be very excited about the Top Gun movie because that was like IP that had only been had not been
Yeah.
exploited once again. It was a standalone thing. There wasn't a Top Gun animated series or something. It was like,
Yeah.
wow, just a single sequel. This is revolutionary in the current era.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be curious where things are going though. Like, I'll be curious, like this amount of Star Wars content right now seems unsustainable to me.
Hmm.
I don't know. I like and like it seems like the superhero genre is really tapped out at this point. Like I'll be curious in the next 10 years or whatever. I gotta say though, like I've been thinking superhero films were dead for 10 years now, like I thought they were done for a long time ago. So I am fully prepared to be really wrong with this take.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there really is incredible like amount of material out there that they're repurposing, and I mean, if I saw Top Gun last weekend, and before it started,
Did you like it?
um, I liked it, but not. I wasn't as crazy about it as a lot of other people
Right.
were. Maybe it was a little overhyped for me.
Yeah.
I gave it like a B. But before it starts, Tom Cruise comes on screen speaking directly to the audience, and he says, this was filmed with real planes, real pilots. Everything you're seeing on screen is real, and so it's sort of pitching it as an antidote to the CGI world that has become standard over the past 10 or 15 years. But at the same time, like the character is essentially a superhero. He's sort of like an
Yeah.
android who can do nothing wrong. He's soaring through the sky at Mach 10.
Yeah.
It's just that they didn't. use CGI, they used actual planes. And so like this is not like an art house film or something. Like this is sort
Yeah.
of kind of the same stuff as before. So I don't know. So that the vibe hasn't shifted there yet, at least.
No.
But it does, I don't know. Hopefully new things will continue to emerge. But of
I
course,
think
they
like
will be remixed from previous
yeah.
cultural items.
I mean, like I remember something that I think applies to a lot of sorts of content. And I remember like I think the songwriter Warren Zevon said this at one point that like you get to have a period in the sun where you're youngish and in your prime, and then towards the end of your life, you get another little run where people are interested in you. And if you get that, that's an amazing career. You know, you get that youthful period, then people have kind of forgotten about you for a while, and then you can come back at the end. But I think that's a common dynamic in culture as well, right? Like with something like Top Gun or whatever, like there's commonly this span of about 30 years where stuff from the 80s or the 90s, they're coming back now. So there is this lull where like there is this period where people just have to like not be interested for for a while. And I think plenty of for the content creator as well, that applies as well. You know, like you get your period, and then there's a lull where people might not care so much about your stuff, and then maybe later, people can be interested in that possibly again. But you know, there is that. I think that a lot of things they do have that period of ascendancy, and then they have to go away at least for a while.
Right. And, this makes me think of Paul McCartney is still touring. The like the boomer icons are mostly still sticking around, and the
Yeah.
culture of the 1960s is still we're still living with that. And
Yeah.
the Beatles documentary that came out, Get Back, was a
Hmm.
very successful and very interesting, and I watched all like 10 hours of it.
Me too.
So it's still sort of like, the peak in various ways was reached 50 years ago. People are still obsessed with it, at least in terms of rock music, which is not a popular genre in general right now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then there's like the sort of early 2000s nostalgia seems to be happening now, at least in fashion, like Juicy Couture,
Yes.
jumpsuit, velour jumpsuits kind of thing. Apparently, it's that is back, and so yeah,
Yep.
I mean, everything old is new again, and that's sort of an eternal thing. Is the people roughly my age or a little bit younger who grew up with something now they have like the purchasing power, or they're making the decisions at fashion companies, and they want to bring back that kind of stuff. So that cycle is always happening. Do you want to maybe we could wrap it up there? Just anything else on the culture, the culture as it currently stands, or what you're seeing out there, or anything like that?
Well, I think like something that I was just thinking when you were speaking there is that it's interesting that there's these sort of two dynamics where you had your period of ascendancy and then you go away for a few decades and then you get rebooted later, like Ghostbusters
Hmm.
or whatever, right? But then these Marvel and Star Wars mega IPs, I guess the way that they're doing it is that it's the universe that keeps going, right? It's not necessarily the particular film series like the Avengers or whatever, right? Which I think is over for a while now, and yet the Marvel universe keeps marching on. So I guess we're in the era of universes now, right? Where the universe can keep going on, but the single film series or leading actor or whatever, they do go away.
Right, and that's sort of like the corporate identity continues on. Well, at some point, like the actors age out of being able to do these things, or they
Yeah.
get sick of it and want to go to something
Yeah.
else. But the corporate entity is sort of immortal, and
Yes.
the characters that Stanley and Kirby and Ditko created in the early '60s, there's still comic books coming out every month that feature these
Yeah.
characters, and they're more or less
Yep.
exactly the same. And so
True.
it's sort of like an endless well of things,
Yeah.
and they change it. It's suddenly Thor's a woman, and then
Yeah.
a year later Thor's a man again, and and it's back to basics, and then it's sort of an
Yeah.
endless. That's
And there's
really
all these
an endless
and there's all
cycle.
these airport authors that I've never read, like, James Patterson or whoever, where they just crank out like a book every year, and they've been doing it for 40 years or whatever, and they keep they're still there in the bestseller list year after year. Like there's all sorts of people that can just keep cranking it out, just keep burying the same stuff over and over again. It seems to work. So I don't know, maybe my theory is trash.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to wonder whether James Patterson is actually writing, every single one, or whether there's a team
Oh,
of
he's
people who
yeah,
you have to assume it's really that. And so, James Patterson is going to shuffle off the Mortal Coil at some
yes,
point, but probably, the novels inspired by, like this happened with Tom Clancy. I assume they're still sort of like from the
yeah,
world of Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy Jr. is writing them or something like that.
yes,
Sort of, yeah, the brand is harder to kill off.
yes.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add or discuss?
No, I mean, I think that was a pretty good tour of the things that I'm into.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
I when I saw the message that you were, sort of leaving the world of video content creation that where I first discovered you, I was like, "Oh man, that sucks." But then, it made sense, and I
Yeah,
I hope that your relationship with the Times and other things they'll still be I hope to
yeah.
continue to see stuff, but
Yeah,
if you
I hope so too. And I mean, I'll just be in a different form. Like I'll still be out there. I just won't be a YouTuber, I guess. I don't know if I was ever really a YouTuber, but so I'll be doing videos for the Times, and then I'm thinking of text as being my main medium going forward, because it's quicker.
right.
Video is very slow. Video is very slow and laborsome, and I need a break from it. It's very hard to evolve something when you're making videos, right? Like with text, you can just put a little something out there and see how it goes over, and then either extend the idea or leave it or whatever. But with video, in particular the way that I do video, there's so much labor that goes into making the video. It takes you months to make the video,
Right.
and then maybe you can pivot after that video comes out, but it's very slow going, right? So I want things to be faster for the near future with my creative intellectual pursuits. So I think text will be my main creative outlet going forward.
Okay, that makes sense, and that sounds promising. And yeah, so in addition to seeing Top Gun last week, and I also saw the Doctor Strange movie. And with the Marvel movies, you wait till the end to see the little
You're
post
hitting
credit
all the great.
sequences.
You're seeing all the great films of our time.
I know I like seeing the big blockbuster things on the big screen
Me too.
because it's
Me
sort of
too.
that's what they're made for. But
Yeah,
when you sit through
absolutely.
these Marvel movies, the list of people who are involved in making it is
Yeah,
thousands seemingly of people. And if you think of, a single creator doing something like this,
I
um
know.
it's just a crazy different scale. But yeah, video
Absolutely.
is a complex medium, a powerful
It's
one,
a
obviously.
beast. Yeah, it's for sure. I mean, it's that's why I think like the vlog format and TikTok and these sort of quicker, easier formats are so dominant is because they're funnier. They're quicker and easier and more fun to make than doing more of an old media style of documentary.
Right. Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so if people want to keep up with the end of the rebooted Everything's Remix, or
Yep.
whatever you are doing in the future, where should
Yes.
they go? Where should they look?
They should subscribe to my newsletter. So if you just search for Everything is Remix, you'll end up at my website, and then there's a pop up there that will invite you to subscribe to my newsletter. I gotta say too, for people listening, newsletters are very rewarding. Like I just feel a lot more impact and connection from writing a newsletter than I do from making a video. Like sometimes when you make a video and you put it out there, you kind of wonder if you actually did click publish or if anything happened, you know? It can
Right.
be very quiet unless you go look at it and see the comments and the views and stuff like that. But it can be very quiet. Not much happens in your world necessarily when you put video out there. But email is an underrated medium, and I would encourage people to check it out if you haven't checked it out. It's definitely a way to like to build a deep connection with a smaller group of people.
Right. And going off of the Everything is a Remix thesis, I mean, email is one of the oldest
Oh yeah,
online communication technologies, and it is sort of funny or weird or something that just sending an email
yeah,
seemingly it maybe is a better way to do it than everything that has come along in the past 30 or 40
yeah,
years since sending an email became something that you could do.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, I feel like it's just a much less crowded place for most people. I think their email box is not a zoo the way that their TikTok feed is or their Twitter feed or whatever is. And another cool thing from a creator's perspective is that you own your email list. You own it forever. You can take it with you to another platform or whatever. it's yours, and you don't own your audience on YouTube or whatever. You can't take them with you. So email is an underrated medium for building a small core of loyalists.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so thank you, Kirby, for taking the time.
My pleasure,
People
Aryeh.
can, people can follow me on Twitter if they want to, if they
I
enjoy this
do.
conversation. Yes, you do, and I appreciate that. And you are Remix Everything on Twitter.
That's correct. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm Remix Everything on Twitter.
and I am REACW, ARYHCW, and people can, rate, review, tell your friends, etc. Okay. Thank you, Kirby, and thanks to our
My
listeners,
pleasure.
and we'll see you again next time.